This Sunday, the ghosts of the Mau are back and are threatening to claim political casualties. The state is laying the groundwork to evict people living in the largest water tower in the region. But there is, as always, political noise. Deputy President William Ruto has steered clear of the debate so far, but his political lieutenants have not. We are live with the latest reactions today. At the same time, the major political parties are getting ready for the forthcoming by-election in Kibra here in Nairobi. ODM are yet to hold nominations with close to a dozen aspirants lining up to replace the departed Ken Okoth. Jubilee say they will field a candidate after not doing so in other many polls in Ugenya and Embakasi South. So how big a litmus test is this for Raila Odinga? We'll also get into politics of trade unions in Kenya following weeks of acrimony. And one of the largest trade unions in the country, Wilson Sossion, was finally ousted as Kenya National Union of Teachers KNUT boss. I am Ben Kitili live from the KTN News Center here in the Kenyan capital, Nairobi. This is Kenya's only Sunday morning political show. Inside Politics begins right now. Be sure to stick with us for the next 120 minutes as we dissect the biggest political and policy issues in the Republic. Let's get right into it. Leaders from the North Rift are accusing Environment CS Keriako Tobiko of playing politics in the planned Phase 2 of the Mau Forest Complex evictions. Timothy Otieno tells us more.
The lush green forest cover that makes up the region's largest water catchment area is slowly fading away, paving way to bare land. It's the consequences of what the national government says is illegal settlement within the Mau Forest Complex, and one in which authorities are hell-bent on rectifying through a series of eviction notices circulated in 5 main areas, forming what is now known as Phase 2 of the Mau Forest eviction.
People must move out of the Mau. And they must move out of the Mau without compensation.
But even before the 60-day notice lapses, leaders from the North Rift region are already blaming bad politics for the predicament that is about to befall over 60,000 people who say they are living within the escarpment legally.
Sasa hivi sasa natembea na Tobiko wako na uwezo juu ya rais kufurusha watu wa Mau. It cannot happen in Jubilee government because we are not government and this government cannot receive to be calling the people again.
The dispute has been political calculations. We are not politicians. We are not interested in politics.
The government is seeking to reclaim 17,000 acres of forest land within the Mau and has already revoked 1,229 title deeds and closed 15 schools in a statement of intent meant to preserve the country's most prestigious water tower.
There is no debate about conservation. We have been very clear in our heads that anybody who lives inside of the forest, please get out. But what we are opposed to is politics that is being played by Cabinet Secretary Keriako Tobiko na huyu mwingine anaitwa Natembea together with their masters of trying to evict children.
The people who are living in Mau at the moment, that is not a gazetted forest. That is a trust land that belongs to Narok County government.
No official communication on when the second phase of the eviction will commence has been announced, even as leaders from the region and the national government continue to trade jabs on the controversial conservation matter that saw the eviction of 9,000 families in Phase 1 of the exercise in Narok South 1 year ago. Timothy Otieno, KTN News.
Thank you, Timothy. Not the first time that the politics of the Mau conservation are coming to the fore. We have been holding this conversation in the past, in prior elections. Let's get into it. My panel is here with me to help me dissect this issue. Mark Bichache is here, communication strategist. Dismas Mokua, political risk analyst. I have with me political analyst Hesbon Owila, and lawyer and political strategist Kipchumba Karori. Kipchumba, let me begin with you. It's not the first time we're hearing or we're getting some noisy and messy conversations coming out of the Mau. I mean, the Mau has to be conserved, but there is always political warfare coming out of it, for lack of a better word. What do you read in what's happening right now?
I think the concept or the context of Mau, Ben, has to be understood from both the internal politics within the Kalenjin region and the outside politics, that is the national politics. And then again, we have to ask ourselves, why will Mau always be used as a political insurance? The regime that is reigning currently in this country, that is Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto, somewhere in 2012 used Mau as their cementing block. And they said the conservation will be done, and the people will move out of Mau, will be compensated. What one ought to ask himself or herself is, what has changed? The other thing, we have to believe it to the fact that Mau has been a thorny issue since the independence time. It did not begin with the African governments. It began with even the Mzungu, because the issue has been, and what was mishandled was the settling of the indigenous groups that were in Mau, the Ogiek group. But now coming to where we are currently, and the amount of just thumping being generated by both the cabinet secretary and the political leadership, and the best way to go out of Mau is dialogue will be the best way. And I agree with the head of the Anglican Church. For us to get a best solution is not to evict, which actually this government rode into power, saying that nobody will be evicted out of their place.
Let's just get this out of the way, Bwana Wakili. Is it correct to say that Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto did not keep their word, hence the problems you're having today?
Yeah, that is the position, because if they had kept their word, the bickering will not be there, because somebody living in Nyanza or somebody living downstream wants Mau to be preserved. Yes, which is their right. And the Constitution talks about a clean environment and everything. Those people living down, the Mara ecosystem deserves to be preserved. That is right. The posterity, which the Constitution says we need to use the resources we have currently to preserve it, states that we must use them in a manner that allows the future of this country to utilize those resources too when their time comes. But Ben, what must not be lost is this. You cannot put the current generation in an inhuman status so that you can preserve something for the future. Where will the future come from if the people die with pneumonia now? And the other thing that anybody who needs to ask himself or herself again is, why will we always discuss Mau 2 years to an election? Are we using those people as election shields or political shields? If we want to preserve Mau, let us bring everybody on board, and two, let the government take responsibility. You cannot build schools 30 years down the line. You cannot issue people with titles and come up tomorrow and say those titles are papers. Also, Tobacco as a CS must exercise caution. He is addressing an issue which will leave 60,000 Kenyans homeless, 60,000 families homeless. That is not a small thing.
Has been the Mau issue. Crisis. Okay, thank you, Bwana Wakili. The Mau issue has claimed political casualties in the past. Raila Odinga, seemingly, according to pundits, paying the price for that, but not for saying anything wrong. I mean, preserving the largest water tower in the region has to be high on any serious leader's agenda. But 60,000 families to be evicted. Is from where you sit, what is wrong with this picture?
Well, I think from what is going on, I know the Mau issue has been politicized over and over again, and there is that politicization that is emerging right now, with almost everyone just thumping. But I think at the core of this is not really the political issue, but how the common mwananchi is suffering between different political formations that are antagonizing and fighting over the Mau issue as a political tool to win elections. Now, if you look at the numbers, are between 40,000 and 60,000 people who are said to be having valid title deeds. And I think these people have a court in the East African Court of Justice, in which case it is even unnecessary for politicians or any other person to start making noise about eviction until this case is determined. But then, if we leave politics aside, I think there are two critical issues about Mau that need to be understood by almost everyone, so that when politicians talk, we can actually put their conversations in perspective. One is the fact that land is an emotive issue in Kenya. So what people are fighting for here is land. And if the government was to sort out issue, they would address how these people acquired valid title deeds. And if they acquired them in any regular manner, the people who are part and parcel of that process should be held culpable. I don't understand why a common mwananchi who has a valid title deed should be forcefully evicted in an inhumane way. So that should be addressed. If we have to protect the water tower, then we have to address what led us to this space where we find ourselves in. And then the second critical issue is the issue of water. I mean, no one would want to detest the eviction of people from the Mau forest. I mean, it's a serious water tower. And studies are showing, actually there are two British, Paul Cornish and Kingsley Donaldson, who in a book, a security book that is looking at security threats called World War 2020, predict that by 2030, the demand for water will outweigh the supply, the sustainable supply of water by 40%. You know, 2030 is just like 2 elections from now. So all of us, you know, need to be aware of the fact that we'll have water scarcity issues, especially sustainable water.
All right.
And therefore, the issue of Mau needs to be looked at in terms of how do you address the land injustices, the people who are given access to the Mau, and the ones who took advantage. And it is the responsibility of the government to isolate those two people. Who are the genuine guys who are located, and if they are being evicted, they have to be compensated. Who are the guys who are encroached, and they have to be punished. And then secondly, how do we deal with the water scarcity issues, beginning from the Mau and all the other water catchment areas, without bringing politics into it? Right. And I think if the public understands this, then any politician who will be saying something that does not make sense will be evaluated on being nonsensical.
All right. Mark, why do we always have political flux, flying out of this issue of the Mau forest?
You know, one of the things that this country avoids to talk about is the fact and the genesis of land issues in this country. Yes, there's the Mzungu who forcefully stole land from Africans, but also it was the redistribution of that same land that became an issue. The issue is that every Kenyan associates owning land with wealth, because the first wealthy Kenyans we knew were the ones who got 1,000 acres, 2,000 acres, 1,000,000 acres from the Mzungu. So that's problem number one. Right. And when we wrote the Constitution, we wrote in it the idea of dealing with land size and land ownership and land use, which we have decided conveniently to completely forget. No one is talking about it in Punguza Mzigo. I don't know whether BBI is going to talk about it, and we are not addressing that issue. The second thing that we are not addressing is what is our ethos as a nation when it comes to conservation, and what is our belief when it comes to what country we want to have when it comes to forestry, Greenland, our savanna, and all of those things. We wax hot and cold based on which day it is and how we feel like. So when you put those things together, Ben, I grew up in Njoro. And in Njoro, you can see the hills of the Mau. And when I grew up, there used to be a forest on those hills. I go there today, and it is bare grass and fields of corn. The result of that is Njoro town is one of the dustiest places you can go to today because of the effect of that deforestation. Now, the question is very simple. Are we a Trump country where we want to go back to coal, we want to degrade our forests for the benefit of profit? If that is the case, then let us all agree, and then please also allocate Mark Bichachi land in the Mau. I wouldn't mind. Okay, if we are going to hell, I might as well go to hell being a huge landowner. But if we are a people who are serious about conservation, if we are serious about the future of this country, then we know that either for the people in the Mau and the people outside of the Mau and the people downstream of the Mau, including all the way to Egypt, then they reserve a right to preserve their future.
All right.
So the question should be, it should not be a question of whether this is trust land, protected forest, or whatever. It should be an issue of what is the most humane way to do the humane thing for everybody. This is what I mean. Find land for these people. It's not very hard. My goodness, if we can pay how many? 1 billion shillings per acre in Nairobi for SGR, for some of the things that we're doing for Ketraco, my goodness, we could not afford 200,000 shillings for a guy in the Mau. That's the problem. So if we can afford 200,000 to relocate these people, let's do that. Relocate them humanely, and let us all decide as a country to come together and agree to preserve the Mau. The second thing that Jubilee should do, and I'm getting really tired of how Jubilee is handling issues, you cannot be in government, dear senators and MPs, and then be the ones shouting loudest about that same government. What are you doing? Because the whole point is Kiraiko Tobiko works for Jubilee. It is a Jubilee administration. You understand? Murkomen works for Jubilee. He is, for God's sake, the leader of government business in Senate. So if you're bickering for us on TV, what are we supposed to do? To come into the Jubilee bedroom and tell you, by the way, thou shalt kiss your wife.
What does that tell you? You've hit the issue on the head, the nail on the head. But what does that tell you? The fact that we have Jubilee lawmakers making the loudest noise. Is it possible that this issue is deliberately being used as a political trump card?
It's not a possibility, Ben. It is politics. It is definitely politics. And it is politics that is detrimental to the people of the Mau. This is what I mean. It is politics that tightening tensions between the Maasai and the Kalenjin community. It is politics that is trying to create, would-be successors for the politicians that exist. It is politics that they know, and this has been used many times, from 1992, 97, 2002, right. The first time I saw a man with a mshale in his stomach, yes. It was because of the Mau. So this is a political tool to heighten tensions for no good reason.
Dismas, what should happen for this to come to an end, the cycles of issues coming from the Mau? And why has the Uhuru Kenyatta administration not dealt with this?
Well, maybe to lay the basis for my answer, number one, the Mau issue is a no-brainer. It's supposed to be a scientific process. And then the biggest agency responsible for environmental programs globally, UNEP, is headquartered in Nairobi. So we've got a very high concentration of scientists who, at the flick of your fingers, would give you advice on how to make progress. In fact, they don't need to give you advice how to make progress. There was already a plan in action. But again, as it happens in Kenya, our tragedy is politicians. The elected leaders are claiming that Kiriako Tobiko is making the Mau management a political issues. And what Kiriako Tobiko is merely doing is executing government policy. I doubt whether Kiriako Tobiko and the county commissioner, Mr. Natembea, would just wake up in the middle of the night and they say we are going to evacuate folks from Mau. Kiriako Tobiko and the national government administration are merely executing a government policy, a Jubilee government policy. And the behavior of a number of these elected MPs, the ones who are introducing politics, they're the ones who are making it complicated for no reason. And they're making it complicated. They've lost sight of the fact that this Mau complex is a national security concern. You know, it takes up to 4 months to grow potatoes in Mau. But you are destroying trees which have been there for about 400 years. So the politicians are encouraging folks to go and cut down an ecosystem which has been in existence for 4 years to grow potatoes which only take 4 months. And when you grow these potatoes, there's no guarantee that there's going to be a market. Now, the reason why I'm saying this is a very serious geopolitical issue, this is the source of River Nile. We've got all the water goes to Lake Victoria, then it goes to River Nile, it goes all the way to Egypt. Now, this irrational behavior of a number of elected leaders can easily plunge, number one, Kenya into a crisis, because believe you me, in the next 50 years, Kenya is going to become a desert if you're going to allow Tom, Dick, and Harry to go and encroach the Mau, simply because we are looking at 2022. And the tragedy we keep on having with our politicians, they don't think along the lines of posterity. They're not looking at the future generations. They're just merely looking at what can we do today to secure a win in 2022. Believe you me, our grandchildren will be asking themselves in the next 50 years, what kind of fools are we to let Kenya become a desert, to let Mau become a desert? And you know, these things are not complicated. A student doing a biology or physics or chemistry, a first-year student who has just received a letter, the first class you're told, conserve this water tower. And Kiriako Tobiko is merely doing what he's supposed to be doing. Okay. And if they think that Kiriako Tobiko is playing politics, maybe because he's a Maasai man, why can these same members of the National Assembly and Senate introduce a motion at the National Assembly and kick him out of office? But again, instead of doing a shadow boxing, going for Kiriako Tobiko, who appointed Kiriako Tobiko into office? It's a President Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta. So why can these MPs face Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta head-on and tell him that you are letting us down? And you know, we cannot allow a few politicians from that part of the world to claim that the Mau belongs to them. This Mau belongs to the entire world, like the Amazon forest in Brazil belongs to the entire world. So we just need to be rational and say, if there are people who have title deeds, maybe they got them by mischief, or there are people who have just encroached into that forest, how can we remove them? But remove them in a structured manner. Because again, you know, you're talking about political families. But at the end of the day, whether the sun comes from the east or the west, those guys must be moved out of Mau in a very structured manner, and we must conserve that.
Let me ask you this. We keep hearing the politicians saying this has to be done in a humane manner. Are there any plans to do it otherwise? What do they mean?
Well, you know, when they're talking about a humane manner, in fact, what they mean when they're talking about humane manner is they're saying, don't kick these guys out of here. Leave them here because we need the votes in 2022. But we can use the example of Abadia. When there was a bit of confusion in the Abadia, people came together, raised resources, and there is a fence. I'm wondering why Kiriako Tobiko cannot think of the same thing. Just get some resources, about 1.5 billion, put up a fence, and tell anybody who is inside this fence, get out of this place. Because, you know, we are not going to... we cannot afford to babysit this serious issue, because in the next 50 years, Kenya is going to be a desert. And as the church has indicated, if you go to the area surrounding Mau, all of them are becoming deserts. So we cannot allow a few politicians to hold President Kenyatta hostage. And you know, some of the clips doing rounds, they're very mischievous. One politician
but at the same time, you make a good point, you and Mark. But at the same time, why hasn't the president not dealt with this?
But he's dealing with this.
He promised to do this in 2012.
But Kiriako Tobiko is doing this. I don't think Kiriako Tobiko...
No, in terms of the guys, 60,000 families being reported to be inside the Mau illegally, why hasn't his government relocated them?
But that's what Kiriako Tobiko is doing. He's relocating them. Maybe he's not doing it in a structured manner, but they must get out.
Two things.
But you know, Ben, the biggest disaster we have in Kenya...
It looks like a crisis. It should have been done...
It's not a crisis. It's the politicians who are painting it to be a crisis because their eye is on 2022. That is our tragedy. Ben. And you know, we are told that serious leaders, they don't look at the 5-year cycle. They look at the future. They look at posterity.
Ben, there is something that we must get it clear. When you read Article 95 of the Constitution, which talks about Parliament and its roles, there is something that Mokua said that we need to educate ourselves as a panel as we move forward. When you elect a member of Parliament, for example, they have 3 roles: to represent people. Mau is not in a protected area, which is not a constituency. Mau is a constituency. Mau falls under a leader, and those people elected this government. And actually, when I did the tally of the votes, Raila Odinga got below 400 votes in all those primary schools that have been blocked. So it means the government of the day is the greatest beneficiary. 2, the people who are elected, Murkomen, those people, they are elected to represent. They are supposed, what do you want them to do? Now, because they are politicians, you want them to go and sleep because they do something.
But the Mau is not in Elgeyo Marakwet.
But the issue is, listen, Murkomen, and I am speaking because Murkomen is the leader of the Rift Valley, elected leaders. 2, there is another thing that we must also define here. When you say these people must be handled in a humane manner, we mean get them alternative place and relocate them. Don't act like these people are animals or they are dogs that you want to eliminate them. No, these people are not tenants in this country. They are citizens just like us. The other point that we need to make also is that we cannot compare Mau and Aberdare. And Bichachi will tell his The gentleman seated next to him. Mau is, that's why it's a complex, is I think how many times bigger than Aberdare. When you say 1.5 billion to fence it, fencing is a good idea, but there are other things that go into that. It is not as just as an issue of brick and mortar and you move on. The other thing that we must also address is the issue of we need somebody who can be consistent and sort the Mau issue once and for all.
All right. Very quickly,
Yes.
Hesbon, as you answer your question very quickly, some people are accusing the president of not caring as much because he's not in for re-election. Is that valid?
I don't think it's valid because I think a cabinet secretary acts at the behest of the president. There's nothing a cabinet secretary can do without the knowledge of the president. So there's clarity on what President Uhuru Kenyatta is doing as far as the Mau issue is concerned. My only problem is, you cannot just generalize everyone and say they must be forcefully evicted. And when people talk about humane treatment, it is not the kind of narrative we get from the CS, because the CS is saying these people will be evicted and no one will be compensated, which is erroneous, because you cannot evict everyone, including the people who are settled in the Mau forest, genuinely and given title deeds. Those ones must be taken care of. But there is a misconception and a myth that goes around that if you come out strongly to protect the Mau, you'll suffer politically. I don't think Raila Odinga suffered politically. The people who are suffering are the people who live at the Mau and the people who come from that area, because their emotions were whipped to believe that Raila Odinga was an enemy.
All right.
This problem will continue following them and their leaders until it is sorted. If a leader comes out strongly and sorts this, I think standing for the right thing will never put a leader on the wrong political path.
Final question, Mark. You say you grew up in Njoro. Residents of Njoro and Molo constituencies are the ones who are going to be affected the most by this. What is the best solution for everyone?
The best solution for everyone, and if you go to Njoro and the guys that grew up with everybody, is clear that they have seen the direct effect of the deforestation of the Mau on even the population and well-being of that place. And I remember seeing timber trucks going up that road. I will not say which company, lest we all get sued here. But it is a travesty what has happened there. The solution is this: we must demystify the representation myth. Just because you were elected to represent people does not mean when they have stupid ideas, you go repeat the ideas publicly. This is what I mean. There was this idea that rain comes from the clouds and it has nothing to do with the Mau, something politicians have said. And this is the kind of nonsense that we entertain that keeps pushing people ahead. Right. There is no way you're an elected MP, then because you're supposed to represent people, your people come to you and tell you, by the best thing we can do is to remove the railway. And you say, because I'm their representative, I'll be the first one. This is the problem why we have representatives going somewhere with chainsaws to cut trees, because that is representation. We need to remove it. The truth is this: for the people of the Mau, it's very simple. Relocate them, reforest the area. That is the solution. Everyone agrees.
Thank you, gentlemen. It is a conversation that will continue in the days and weeks to come. 60,000 families are reported to be living inside the Mau and will be affected by this, even though the government continues to lay groundwork for those evictions, political divisions over the same. Let's take a quick commercial break here on Inside Politics on KTN News. When we come back, we'll be getting into more politics. Here in the capital, Kibra by-election coming up.